All right. There's no time like the present. And, brother, we are living in the present right now. Welcome to the Panther-Lair Show here on a Tuesday night. Our Tuesday night live stream is up and running. If you listen to this podcast through the week, we appreciate that. But, boy, Tuesday night live is the place to be because this isn't just a regular Tuesday night Panther-Lair Show live stream podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. This is the signing day preview episode of the Panther-Lair Show. And, you know, we started doing this live stream podcast, or I guess a better way to say it is we started taping the podcast as a live stream, I think it was last February. So, I mean, we're coming up on, 10 months. I mean, closing in on getting close to a year of doing this, but we haven't done a night before signing day live stream yet. And so here we are going live the night before signing day. And admittedly, you know, we're going to release this podcast pretty much as soon as the live stream is done. So if you're listening to the podcast on Wednesday, it's going to preview signing day. But the action really starts, I mean, less than 12 hours from now. We're starting this live stream here on Tuesday night around 8:30. And the fax machines start rolling, as I say, around 7 a.m. Now, it's not all fax machines anymore. There's a lot of emails and things like that get sent, and so it's not all fax machines. But I mean, if you want to use the parlance of our times, or what it's come to be known, then the fax machines start rolling at 7 a.m. So all the recruits we're talking about here tonight, that we're going to talk about over the next hour, or however long it takes us to talk about Pitt's 2021 recruiting class, they're all going to start signing around 7 a.m. Couple of things we got to get to, of course, before we get started. You should know the website by now. If you're on this live stream, you should know the website. It's Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. It's Pittsburgh.rivals.com is another way you can get to the website. What is it? It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, we have message boards. And let me tell you, the boys have been buzzing on the message boards this week, and pretty often. I mean, pretty much all the time, the boys are buzzing on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And the ladies. We've got a nice female contingent of Pitt fans who chime in on the message boards. But it's been wild. It's been active, and certainly this weekend and this week, there's been a lot of activity, and for good reason. I mean, you've got the Pitt football teams coming off a 3-1 finish to the season. Put together a pretty good recruiting class, and it looks like they're going to sign all those guys tomorrow. So there's plenty to talk about there. On the basketball side of things, you've got, the team obviously had a bad loss to open the season, but they've rebounded nicely since then. Won the last 4 games, and they've got a guy who, is just making history right now. With Justin Champagnie going for 20 and 20 in back-to-back games. So there's a lot to talk about on the hoops side as well, and you might get Nike Sabande back for this game on Wednesday night at Miami, the ACC opener. So there's a lot going on in all areas of Pitt sports, the football, the basketball, and the recruiting. And we're talking about it all at Panther-Lair.com. So, I mean, that's the place you want to be, Panther-Lair.com. I'm realizing as I started this live stream, I don't have a home field shirt on. I feel like I'm missing something. I don't have my home field shirts. I got a couple of them, t-shirts and a sweatshirt. I usually try and sport them out here. But if you don't know about home field, I mean, these are the guys who are making some of the best gear with some of the best designs, some of the best high-quality college, officially licensed college products that you're going to find anywhere. And they've got a great pick collection. They got a great collection for a lot of schools. I mean, some schools that a lot of people are fans of, some schools that are, you would like to have. Like I have a University of Hawaii Rainbow Warriors sweatshirt. It's awesome. They got the Colorado College of the Mines, I think, or School of Mines, whatever it's called. They got a lot of great stuff, and they have great designs on the shirts. The shirts are super high quality. They're super soft. They're super comfortable. Go check them out. Homefieldapparel.com. If you're looking for and you're cutting it close. But if you're looking for a Christmas gift, or you're looking for a gift for someone, a Pitt fan in your life, or just something for yourself, go to homefieldapparel.com and check out what they've got on. I screwed up. Usually I try and have a home field shirt on when we do the live stream and the podcast. I didn't have it today, but it's been a bit of a hectic day, and that's why we're been running around like crazy, and that's why we're going to kick open a cold one here. Now, this is not... So I got Arx right here. They got their Winter Spice Ale. You can see it's a specialty series. Arx is a gluten-free brewery in Emsworth. This is, when I talk about Panther-Lair.com, that's a paid endorsement. The guys at Panther-Lair.com are paying me to talk about the website here on the podcast. When I talk about Home Field, I mean, they're sponsoring us. They support the podcast. They support the website. You know, we're giving them a shout out. I heartily endorse their products, but they support us. RX is just this is a labor of love for me because it's a gluten-free beer, and I like beer. So I'm going to drink it during the podcast. I'm going to talk about it because it's good, and I was super excited to see they came out with a winter spiced ale. I don't even know if you can buy it anymore. I think it sold out that quickly, but it's really good. You can see why it sold out that quickly. But this day has been hectic. It's been, we're sitting here on Tuesday. It's the day before signing day, and, when I woke up on Tuesday morning, it really, I thought there was one thing we were going to be focused on. And that was Khalil Anderson, the cornerback from Atlanta, who looks like one of the best recruits in Pitt's class, and other schools around the country had taken notice. I mean, he picked up a lot of offers from the time he committed to Pitt, I think in like the first or second week of June. He got a bunch of Power 5 offers, including Penn State last week, Miami during the season, Clemson and Georgia showing some interest in trying to gauge his interest and see if they can get him to hold off on signing until February to see if they can make another shot at him if they have the scholarship room to make it happen. This was the big question mark. I woke up Tuesday morning and thought, all right, here's what we're going to do. Got to work on signing day content, work on getting ready for signing day and preparing all the things, all the articles and things we're going to have on signing day throughout the day because we can't just say, hey, this guy signed to be done with it. We got a lot of stuff we're going to do on Panther-Lair.com on signing day. We actually have some new things we're doing this year. I'm really excited about it. We've been working on it this week, and I think you definitely should check it out because I think you're going to enjoy some of the new content that we've got on signing day. We got a couple of things that I think Pitt fans are really going to dig and really enjoy. So make sure you check out Panther-Lair.com throughout the day on signing day because we got some cool stuff coming. So it was all, woke up on Tuesday morning thinking, all right, it's all about locking down this Khalil Anderson stuff, finding out what his plan is, and then, getting content prepared. Thought that's it. Well, throughout, by noon or 1 o'clock, we've got the Khalil Anderson thing locked in. He's set. He's going to sign. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but that's good news for Pitt. All right, great. Move forward by dinner time. Now there's 2 new defensive back prospects that it looks like Pitt's going to have a really good chance to land. And you're thinking, all right, starting over again because we got to track these guys down and find out what's going on in their situations and see if they're going to sign with Pitt or what's happening there. And it felt like signing day again because we were running around all day trying to track these things down. It still am. And, my phone, it's right next to me, and it's going to be right next to me throughout this podcast. And I apologize if I get distracted, but I promise you, if I get something really interesting and I can share it, I will. So maybe we'll have some breaking news on the live stream. Probably not, but just in case. We've still yet to have a commitment during a live stream. That would be a new one. And it'd be interesting to see how we handle that. But, it was good to have this day sort of feel like a run-up to signing day. Because before we get into the class, and I want to talk about this class and the standouts and my overall thoughts on the class and some of the big storylines. But before we even get into that, like so many things this year, it's been strange. It's been a weird run up to signing day for a lot of reasons. You start off with the fact that we're in this recruiting dead period. The NCAA created a dead period in March, and it just keeps getting extended. I think it's extended until next March or so. And the dead period basically means, and people often get confused about this, and I think we got a pretty good crowd in here for the live stream tonight. So we'll talk about this. We'll lay this out here, just so everybody knows kind of the terms that we talk about when we talk about recruiting. So you've got different periods in the calendar year. You've got the contact period, the evaluation period. Those kind of happen in different points. But 2 of the big ones that you've got are the quiet period and a dead period. And what those really designate is the times of year when recruits and coaches can meet in person and where they can meet in person. So, when you've got, let's say the dead period, all right? So the dead period Recruits and coaches cannot have any in-person contact. You can't do it on campus. You can't do it off campus. You can FaceTime and text and call and Zoom and DM and all those different things, but you cannot have in-person recruiting contact during a dead period. Now, a quiet period, you can have that in-person recruiting contact, but it can only happen on campus. You can't, if you go to a recruit's high school, you cannot talk to him while you're there. And this is the case, they have these evaluation periods in the spring or an evaluation period in the fall where you can go out and watch a recruit work out in the spring or go to his game in the fall, but you can't actually have contact with him. Technically, you can't have contact with him when you're off campus. If you're on campus, sure, you guys can hang out and, share a cup of tea and whatever it is that you want to do if you're a coach, but you can't do it off campus. Now, the contact period, this is when things get really exciting, and this is what we should be in right now. Well, what we should have been in for the past couple weeks here in December. The contact period is when you can have in-person contact, whether you're on campus or off campus. And this is where the recruiting really jumps, okay? Because this is December and January. This is when the coaches make their final pushes to get their class solidified. It's those in-home visits we always talk about. And the coaches will go out and they'll go to the high school during the day and they'll spend a bunch of time talking to teachers and principals and guidance counselors, and they'll run into the kids and talk to the kids, and they'll talk to the coaches, and then that night talk to the high school coaches, and then that night the college coaches will go to the recruit's home and they'll sit in their house for a couple hours and they'll talk football and they'll have dinner and they'll watch TV, they'll shoot the breeze. They'll hang out like friends, like family. This is a big part of it. And, when you've really got it going well and you've got the right guy running your program, the head coach goes on that in-home visit because the head coach can only make one in-home visit with each recruit. Assistant coaches can go 6 times. Head coach, 1 time. And so the head coach makes that in-home visit count. That's where he closes the deal. If it's a recruit who's on the fence about which school he wants to go to, he's got a top 3 or a top 5 or whatever it is, you send your head coach in to close, to make the deal, right? And if you've got a recruit who's committed to you, but he's wavering a little bit, he's back and forth, you send the head coach in to lock that thing up. This is the way recruiting is supposed to work. This is how it goes through the calendar, through the schedule. But not this year. This year, we're in a dead period. This year, we've been in a dead period since March. This year, there hasn't been any in-person contact on campus, off campus, on Mars, anywhere. There hasn't been any in-person contact since like the first week of March when recruits were able to go out and visit some spring camps and things like that. And Pitt had a couple of guys come in, first week of March. Kyle Fugetti, the offense, or no, not Kyle Fugetti, Gavin Bartholomew, the tight end from Schuylkill Haven who committed to Pitt a week or two ago. Made a visit in March during that first week or two before things really kind of blew up and the pandemic led the NCAA to put in a dead period that we're still in. So nobody's taking official visits. A lot of recruits are committed to schools that they have never even visited. I think what you've seen happen over the last few months, really through the summer and certainly through the fall, is recruits have just up and driven to a campus. And they're not there to meet the coaches. They can't be shown around by the coaches. They can't have tours from anybody. But they just drive there and walk around. Nate Yarnell, Pitt's quarterback commitment from Austin, Texas in October, flew to Pittsburgh and walked around and hung out. Checked out the city, checked out the campus. He couldn't meet with the coaches. He couldn't talk to them. Didn't really want to have them guide him on anything because he didn't want to break any rules. But he said, I have to actually see this place before I come up here. Nate Yarnell is going to sign on Wednesday. He's going to enroll in January, and he was going to do it at a school he had never set foot on. And so he was like, well, I got to do this myself. Khalil Anderson, the cornerback we're talking about, he committed to Pitt in June, and he did that after him and his family, they're from Atlanta. They flew to Detroit, got a car, rented a car, drove to Pittsburgh, spent the day in Pittsburgh, drove back to Detroit, slept overnight, woke up in the morning, drove to East Lansing, checked out Michigan State all day, drove back to Detroit, slept overnight, and flew back to Atlanta. And then he committed to Pitt like the next day. This is what recruits have had to do. Trey Anderson, another example. Pitt's offensive line / tight end commitment, kid from Utah who graduated high school 2 years ago, and he's been serving a mission since then. He's gung-ho on Pitt. He's really excited to go to Pitt. He can't wait to enroll in January, but he'd like to actually see the place before he comes to town, before he moves in. I mean, imagine going to college, never seeing the school that you're going to. And I'm not even talking about a football player, just you or me. When we go to college, you want to see where you're going to live. Hell, take college out of the equation. Who's going to move somewhere? I'm getting animated. I almost dumped my beer. Who would want to move somewhere sight unseen? And these kids are no different. This is a 4 or 5 year decision. And so, Trey Anderson and his family, they fly out, they get tickets to a Steeler game, they spend the weekend in Pittsburgh, they walk around the campus, they go see the facilities, all of it without any Pitt coaches around. But this is what you've had to do because the NCAA says you can't have recruiting visits. And we're not going to debate whether that's a good rule or not. Personally, I think it could be done safely. This is their rule. And this has made this year very different because normally in these couple of weeks leading up to signing day, and they've only had this December signing day for the last couple of years, but I mean, this has been the hubbub of activity. These first few weeks of December when recruits are taking official visits, but the coaches are going out and doing those in-home visits. And man, we would be writing like every morning and every night, listing which recruits got visits from coaches and how it went and where they stand and if they're going to go visit other schools or if they're going to commit, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was wild. It was fun. It was exciting. And it hasn't been that at all this year because the coaches can't go anywhere. The coaches can't go out and recruit. They have to stay at home. There's no in-home visits. There are in-home visits. It's just the coaches sitting in their own homes, FaceTiming with recruits, presumably in their homes. And so it's been different. And then you also have the whole fact that, the regular season, I mean, for Pitt, the regular season ended 6 days before signing day. You never have it go, you never have that short of a window between the end of the regular season and signing day. Even when Pitt played in the ACC championship game in 2018, that game I think was on December 1st. Signing day was still on like the 18th or 19th. There's always a 2 or 3 week space where you could really dive into recruiting. The coaches could dive into doing the recruiting. People like me could dive into reporting on the recruiting. There was always that space. Here, you've got 6 days from the Georgia Tech game to signing day. It's a small window. It's a quick turnaround. It's just been, 2020 has been an upside down year on so many levels. And, in the grand scheme of things, college football recruiting is not the most important thing that's been turned upside down by the COVID-19 pandemic and how, in the response to it. But it's been turned upside down. It's been the apple cart has been considerably upset, and it's led to some wild things in recruiting, things that you wouldn't have expected to see, like guys committing to schools they've never visited or to coaches they've never met in person, which is the case. And I think it's the case at almost every school. It's the case at Pitt. It's not with the entire class, but it's with a lot of them. They're going to come to campus. There are guys in Pitt's class who will come to campus when they enroll either in January or in June, and the first time they walk into the Southside facility, or the first time they walk into the Southside facility in June will be the first time they've ever walked into the Southside facility. And the first time they shake Pat Narduzzi's hand will be the first time they've ever shaken Pat Narduzzi's hand. That's wild. But that's 2020 for us. And that's where we are entering signing day. I guess you could call it signing day 2020, but it's for the 2021 class. So we'll call it signing day 2021. Now, as for this class, this recruiting class of 2021, currently sitting with, I think, 22 commitments. That number is going to change. They're not going to sign exactly 22 guys tomorrow. Well, actually, they might. Now that I think about it, I don't think it's going to be exactly the 22 who are currently listed on the commitment list. Let me say that, because now I just did some quick math in my head, and I could see them end up signing 22 guys on signing day. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 21. Probably, I would say it's probably most likely to be 21. Then the next most likely is 22, and then after that is 20, I would say. I don't think it's going to go up to 23 that they sign. I mean, unless something really surprising happens, but I don't see that being the case. And the class is really headlined by, they've got 3 4-star recruits, and that helps the class ranking. It's bumped them up into a top 25 ranking, as of Tuesday. That was a slip of a few spots from when they were in the top 20. I think they were at number 19 at some point last week. They dropped down a few spots to number 22. I think if you stay in the top 30 range, if you're Pitt, that's a good place to be. I don't know if they'll stay. I don't know if they'll stay in the top 25. I think they should be able to maintain a spot in the top 30. A lot of it's going to depend on what happens with the schools around them. You know what I mean? Who gets commitments and who loses commitments and how those schools move up and down, because I don't think there are too many more pieces that Pitt is going to add to this class that would really shift things, move them up or move them down. So I think you're looking at best case scenario, a top 25 class, a class that ranks somewhere between 20 and 25, or a top 30 class that ranks between 25 and 30. And as long as it's ranked better than 29, it'll be Pat Narduzzi's highest ranked recruiting class, which seems notable to me. It really does seem notable to me because as we talk about Pat Narduzzi and we spend so much time trying to evaluate the Narduzzi era, and we spend so much time talking about, what is the ceiling for Pitt football under Pat Narduzzi? Should he stay? Should he go? Where are they really going to get under Narduzzi? I think the simple truth is, and I think I can back this up, that the recruiting has improved in the last 3 years. I think the 2019 class was nice. I think it provided a good foundation that I think is going to look better and better, probably as soon as, the end of next season. I think you're going to feel a lot better about the 2019 class than you did probably entering this year and maybe even coming out of this year. I think the 2020 class, I said at the time, and those are the guys who were freshmen this year. Your Jordan Addison and your Jalen Barden and your Dayon Hayes, those linebackers, Bengali Kamara and Solomon DeShields, and A.J. Roberts, some really good DBs. I think Izzy Abanikanda has good potential as a running back. I said at the time I felt that class, those guys who were freshmen this year, was Narduzzi's best recruiting class. Now this year's class, this 2021 class, the guys who are incoming freshmen, is giving it a run for its money, and understandably so. I think you look at this class and you see a lot to like. You really do. And I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm going to talk about the guys in this class, but I think there is a trend of improvement in the recruiting. And I think you can trace it back to a lot of things. I think you can trace it back to, I think the ACC championship game, making the ACC championship started off some momentum and gave Pitt some momentum. I think hiring Chris Beatty has helped. I think Charlie Partridge's influence has, helped the recruiting classes every year. I think some of the success of local guys like DeMar Hamlin and Paris Ford has helped Pitt, particularly with some of the local recruits, but overall just raising the profile, and having some of these more star players is drawing more attention. And overall, I think they've got a good recruiting staff put together for the most part. I don't think every guy on the staff is a great recruiter, but I think for the most part, they've got a pretty strong recruiting staff, and I think it's paying off. I think it's the results are right there on the paper when you look at the classes they're signing. Now this year, this 2021 recruiting class, I think it's headlined by some local talent, some homegrown talent, some hometown heroes, as they like to call themselves, as the Pitt coaches like to call them, and I think as a lot of fans like to call them. And of course, I'm talking about Elliot Donald, the defensive tackle from Central Catholic, Nikai Johnson, the defensive end from West Mifflin, Dorian Ford, the defensive tackle from Baldwin, and Stephon Hall, from the safety from Central Valley. That's 4 really good WPIAL prospects. 4 of the top, you would say at most 6 prospects in the WPIAL, maybe 7. I think if you were to list the top 7 recruits in the WPIAL, I think these 4 would be among that group. I think you can make a good case for, Nikai Johnson being the best prospect in the WPIAL. I think Derek Davis and the safety from Gateway who's going to LSU probably ended up as the highest ranked recruit out of the WPIAL. And Elliot Donald, I know on Rivals.com is ranked higher than Nikai Johnson, but Nikai Johnson's a stud. I think he's going to be a beast off the edge for Pitt as a pass rusher. I think he's going to, there might be enough depth that they don't need him as a freshman, but I think by his second year, he's going to be making an impact. I really am confident about that. And then you get the 2 big guys in the middle of Donald and Dorian Ford. With Ford in particular having the potential to move to the offensive line if that's where his best fit really is. You've got two really talented, I think, defensive tackles there. And then Stephon Hall, I think people sleep on a little bit, to be honest. I think you watch his film from his senior year at Central Valley and even throughout his career at Central Valley. He's really good. He can really play at safety. He's got a nose for the ball. He's really physical. He gets after it and lays guys out. And I think that's what you like to see from a safety, particularly in high school. That they're not just guys who are trying to be corners playing safety. You want guys who are going to stick their nose in it, and that's what Hall does. And I think he's got a chance to be really good at Pitt. And I think this is all. I think it's important that Pitt had this success in the Whippeal, because we know that Pitt hasn't always done that great in the Whippeal. And particularly in recent years. I mean, you could go back, but one of the worst years was 2017. And I mean, I shouldn't say worst. I mean, worst is a bit harsh. I mean, they got guys from the Whippeal in 2017. Obviously, Paris Ford was a headliner, arguably the best prospect in the area that year. And they got Gabe Hoy, and they got Grant Kerrigan. They might have had one or two others I can't think of off the top of my head. But they missed on Lamont Wade. They missed on C.J. Thorpe and David Adams and Kurt Heinisch and Donovan Jeter. I mean, it was just this, Josh Lugg. It was this really, really good year in Western PA, and Pitt got one of the top guys, and it might have been the top guy. Paris Ford might have been the number one guy. You can debate that. He's one of the top guys in that class locally, but Pitt only got one of them, and they lost a bunch to Penn State. They lost a bunch to Notre Dame. They lost one to Michigan. They got cleaned out. And it didn't look good. And I think, you look at 2018, 2019, those classes weren't as strong in Western PA. 2019, this past year, 2020, they only signed one guy. That was Deion Hayes. And he was the only Western PA recruit from Pitt that Pitt signed in the 2020 class. So the Whippeal and Western PA hasn't always been a strength for Pitt. And you can look at the guys who got away. You can look at the guys who left. And there were some of those guys this year. But getting Elliott Donald, getting Nakai Johnson, getting Dorian Ford, getting Stephon Hall, when these guys had legit offers, these guys had opportunities to go a lot of places. When you look at Johnson and Ford and Donald's offer sheets, I mean, that's what you want Pitt recruits to have. And when there's that caliber of player in your backyard with that kind of offer sheet, you want to be able to make a statement. You want to be able to walk out and say, we're keeping the best players here, or at least we're keeping a lot of them. We're not going to keep them all. And look, even Dave Wanstead never kept them all. You can go through every one of his classes. He'd get a lot of great Whippeal players, but he didn't get all of the great Whippeal players. You can find guys every year from Western PA who left Western PA, and they went to Penn State, or they went to Notre Dame, or they went to Michigan, or went to wherever, but they never got them all. But you want to get a lot of them. And this year, they got a lot of them. And I think that's one of the biggest storylines in this recruiting class is that, with maybe the best defensive line issues. Okay, let's see. You guys still hear me? Somebody's in the chats. If you can hear me, tell me that you're getting this. We were really humming along there. Had a lot of people on the stream. I apologize for the issues. Hopefully that still came through. But so I think getting okay. Thanks, guys. Royce Beacom, Tyler Buchanan. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully you heard what I was saying there. I think it's a major accomplishment for Pitt to get these three big Whippeal defensive linemen. I think that was huge for Pitt to pull that off. Those guys, that's a big class for Pitt. It's a big get for Pitt. Other storylines, I think the Whippeal D lineman it's a big storyline for Pitt in this 2021 recruiting class. The other storyline is in Virginia, and this is one that I think is pretty significant as well. Pitt's got 4 commitments from the state of Virginia, 4 guys who are going to sign. Naquan Brown, 4-star outside linebacker / defensive end, Miles Alston, the wide receiver, and Rodney Hammond and Malik Newton, both running backs. Hammond, Newton, and Alston are all 3-star recruits. Naquan Brown is a 4-star prospect. And this is all Chris Beatty. Chris Beatty, the wide receivers coach, gets all the credit here. I mean, the position coaches, Andre Powell was involved with Malik Newton and Rodney Hammond. I think Charlie Partridge is involved with Naquan Brown. you give credit to those guys, but Chris Beatty is really the one who made this happen. Because if you roll the calendar all the way back to the spring of 2019, right after Beatty was hired, and I still remember this, and if you're on Panther-Lair.com, you probably remember this as well. Beatty got a bunch of guys from Virginia, a bunch of sophomores to come in and take visits during spring camp. Guys who were finishing up their sophomore year. They weren't even juniors yet. So this is a couple years in advance. But he was laying the foundation. He was laying the groundwork for making progress in the state of Virginia for Pitt. And when you go back and look at those lists, and I still have the spreadsheet that we made of all the guys who visited that spring. It was a ton of recruits. And there was guys in that 2020 class. Deion Hayes was there. Hunter Sellers came in. A few others I can't remember off the top of my head. But when you look at the list of the guys who visited that spring, you see Naquan Brown, Miles Alston, Malik Newton, Rodney Hammond. It's all these Virginia guys that they ended up getting commitments from 2 years later. And that's all Beatty. And Beatty had those relationships when he was receivers coach at Maryland. He had already built those relationships with Alston and Newton and Hammond and Brown and a bunch of other Virginia kids. But then he goes to Pitt, immediately gets those guys offers. If Pitt hadn't offered them already, and I forget, I don't think Pitt had offered any of those four. And almost immediately gets those guys scholarship offers, gets them on visits, and here we are, they're about to sign it. And, Chris Beatty, you can say what you want about Pitt's receivers, whether they need to catch the ball better, whether they, this or that, separation, blah, blah, blah. This guy can recruit. Chris Beatty's a great recruiter. And I think he's a better coach probably than we're going to give him credit for when we talk about dropped passes. I think he's actually a pretty good receivers coach. I mean, he's got Jordan Addison as the team's leading receiver as a freshman. I think he did some good work with Maurice French last year. Maurice French will tell you that Chris Beatty helped him a lot and in coaching. So you've really got the total package in Beatty as far as being a receivers coach and a recruiter. And the recruiting is definitely coming to fruition with this class, with 4 guys out of Virginia. And I think that's a big storyline as well. So, you get 4 Whippeal kids, and you get 4 from Virginia. You actually have 2 more from Pennsylvania. So you end up with 10 guys out of a 22-man class. 10 of them are from Pennsylvania and Virginia. And I think that's a point. I think that's a reflection of the emphasis, where they said we need to get these guys from the Whippeal, and we need to get these guys from Virginia. And they went out and got them. Elsewhere you look around the class, I think, the other big thing that really stands out to me beyond sort of geography in this recruiting class is, addressing depth on offense. 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, a couple receivers, 5 or so offensive linemen. They really hit the offense hard in this class with numbers and really tried to rebuild some of the rooms. I think Chris Beatty has remade the wide receivers room, and I think he's going to continue to do that with Miles Alston and Jaden Bradley coming in this class. I think obviously he did it last year with Jordan Addison and Jalen Barden and Aiden Henningham. I think they're trying to rebuild the running back room with Rodney Hammond and Malik Newton. All these offensive linemen, I mean, they're just trying to restock at that position. And then obviously 2 tight ends. I mean, what Pitt's tight end situation has been over the last 5 years. Basically, since Scott Orndorff left, it hasn't been good. And so they bring in 2 tight ends in this class to try to rebolster that spot. This year's class, when I talk about storylines, when I think about the goals that the coaches had, I think it was 1, get a presence in Virginia. I mean, this is not in any order, but I mean, one of the goals was establish a presence in Virginia. Clean up in these Whippeal guys because they're really good Whippeal prospects, and they needed to get a bunch of them, and they did. And then restock the offense. I think that was a big priority. And probably the 4th was restock the defensive backs. And I think they're going to do that. They might end up signing about 5 or 6 guys by the time Wednesday is done. So you look at, I think, what the goals were for this recruiting class, and I think they really hit them in a highly atypical year, in a year where things just, nothing was the way it's supposed to be. Nothing was the way it usually is. I think Pitt went out and they've put together a really good recruiting class. Again, like I say, I think you're seeing improvement in recruiting that has to at least give you some encouragement about where the program could be headed. Now, I mean, you need the on-field results to back that up. You need the on-field results to follow. But for now, when we're looking at it from here, from what you can accomplish in an off season, I think this staff is doing a pretty good job with recruiting. All right, I do want to get to questions and comments and reactions, get everybody's thoughts and what you guys are thinking, what you want to ask about when it comes to Pitt's recruiting class. The 2021 recruiting class with signing day on the way. Of course, you can use the super chat function and jump in and throw a couple bucks at the podcast, support it a little bit, and we'll definitely get to your questions and your comments if you are a super chatter. We definitely respect everybody, appreciate everybody who wants to jump in there. S-Mac is starting our conversation off with an injury report for Miami. Yeah, the Miami basketball team is going to be missing a bunch of guys when Pitt goes down to Miami to take on the Hurricanes, the ACC opener on Wednesday night. We're going to stick to recruiting here, S-Mac, on this podcast, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of guys out for Miami. Pitt should have a real chance to start the ACC schedule 1-0. Anthony Tennyson said, I just saw we may get that guy from Vanderbilt, a 3-star cornerback. Yeah, Anthony's talking about Marlon Sewell is his name. He's a cornerback from Alabama. He committed to Vanderbilt really just a couple of weeks ago. Actually, oddly enough, the day after Derek Mason was fired. Very curious situation there. But I think he's really an under-the-radar prospect who, when you look at Marlon Sewell's film, you say, wait, why doesn't this guy have more offers? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Pitt has been in contact with him for the last couple weeks. They offered him a scholarship on Tuesday, and as of Tuesday night, he told me he's planning to talk with his parents about what he's going to do on Wednesday. He's going to sign around 9 a.m. I'm guessing that's Alabama time, probably Central Time Zone, right? And so he's going to make his decision then, presumably between either sticking with Vanderbilt or flipping to another school, Pitt being one of the options he could potentially flip to. I think Pitt's got a real chance here. And I think if they can get him, that's a real boost to an already pretty strong defensive back group that Pitt needs to the coaches wanted to bolster from the start. They wanted to improve the DBs. They wanted to get a bunch of corners and a bunch of safeties in this class. They've already sort of done that, and it looks like they're trying to add some more. John Kay, our guy who's always on the podcast, and we appreciate him, asked, why did Pitt decline to go to a bowl game? I mean, John, they had the players vote, and the players voted 90% in favor of not playing in a bowl game. I think they're done. I think they're done with this season. I think they don't want to spend the next 3 weeks quarantining and testing and staying away from their families so they can go to, Annapolis for a day trip or a 2-day trip to play against Navy and go through all of that again. I think they're done with this season. I talked about it last week on the podcast that I don't think we've given enough airtime to talking about how difficult this season has really been for the players, but I think they reached this point and I think they were done. Got super chatter jumping in, our guy RJ Seaman. We appreciate that. If you got a question or a comment, RJ Seaman, we will talk about that. Talk about it whenever you got something to say. Brock Madonic asks, do you truly believe Pitt will hold on to Khalil Anderson and Brandon Honorable? And what recruit do you think isn't being talked about enough and is flying under the radar and will contribute in the future for this class? All right, a couple things in there. Brock, you mentioned a couple of guys. Khalil Anderson is the cornerback from Atlanta that I talked about earlier, and he committed to Pitt in June. Had a decent offer sheet at that point. He's added a bunch of offers since then. Ole Miss, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Minnesota, Miami, and then most recently Penn State last week. There's a lot of uncertainty a lot of uncertainty about Khalil Anderson, what he was going to do, if he was going to sign on Wednesday, who he was going to sign with, if he was going to delay, put off his signing, and sign in February, what he was going to do. I mean, we got it pretty well confirmed here on Tuesday that he's going to sign. I never say anything's 100%, but it seems pretty close that Khalil Anderson's going to sign with Pitt on Wednesday morning. I think he's having a signing ceremony around 1 o'clock. I imagine he'll sign earlier than that, but I think that one's pretty well set. And Khalil Anderson's a big-time cornerback prospect. We've got him on Rivals.com as a 3-star recruit. I think we've got him terribly underrated. He broke up like 25 passes over the last 2 years. He's got 8 interceptions over the last 2 years. He's a big-time playmaker. And you watch his film, the closing speed is elite level. And the ball skills are elite level, and he's physical, and he hits. I mean, he is what Pat Narduzzi looks for in a cornerback prospect. And I think he's I think he's exactly the kind of guy that they want to get, and I think he's going to have a real chance to play and potentially even start next year. So I think that's a huge one. Brandon Honorable, Brock Madonic also asked about Brandon Honorable. He's an offensive lineman out of Detroit, big offensive lineman, about 6'7", really, really big guy. And it looks like he's not going to sign with Pitt on Wednesday. I think there are academic concerns there. I don't know what could be resolved by February, but for now, I think Pitt is going to hold off on having him sign. I think he very much wants to remain a Pitt commitment. I think Pitt wants to keep him on the commitment list because he's an offensive tackle prospect with a lot of upside. But it's not happening right now. And I think he's got some academic issues that he needs to tend to. And so that's always one of those complicating factors in here. And we'll see what happens as the next 2 months play out. As far as a recruit that I think isn't talked about enough and flying under the radar, I think I've talked a lot about Malik Newton, the running back. I think he can be a stud. He's a power back, but he's got some explosive power in his game. I like Jaden Bradley, the wide receiver from DeMatha. He's a bigger receiver. He's about 6'4", who moved from quarterback 2 years ago. Didn't play this season because they didn't their league canceled or postponed to the spring or something like that. But really intriguing as a guy with size, a good feel for the game, and good speed. I think he's got a real potential to play in the future as well. S-Mac asks or says, at 6'3", 215 pounds, linebacker is a better path to the NFL for Naquan Brown. Yeah, Naquan Brown's an interesting one. He is about 6'3", 210, 215, like you said. But, I think a lot of schools were unsure about Naquan Brown because of his hold on. Folks, we've got some news right here. We have got some news right here. Kenny Pickett just tweeted 2 minutes ago, 1 more year. Here we are on the signing day preview. And Kenny Pickett's coming back, folks. Kenny Pickett will play another year for quarterback at Pitt. And I always said I wondered what would happen if we had breaking news during the podcast. And here it is. That's huge for Pitt. As we talk about, we've talked so much about next season and how quarterback is going to be a major issue and a major question mark for Pitt. And, because you saw Joey Yellen and you saw Davis Bevel and you saw Nick Patty and you wondered if they're going, are they going to go out and get a transfer quarterback? Who are they going to bring in? Are they going to go with the guys they have on the roster? And kind of lurking underneath all of that is, always was the possibility of, well, what if Pickett just came back? What if Kenny Pickett just returned? Boy, that would seem to alleviate a lot of the concerns and alleviate a lot of the problems. And alleviate a lot of the uncertainty surrounding Pitt's offense in 2021. If you could just get 1 more year out of him. And I don't know what that means for 2022. I don't know what who you turn to then. But boy, getting Kenny Pickett back for 2021 certainly changes the outlook for this offense. And I think changes the outlook for the team. I think, you talk about having some optimism about Pitt's defense for 2021. And I think this was something I talked about. I thought you saw some of the younger players flash the potential that they have and what they could potentially do into, going forward with some of the opportunities they got after Paris Ford opted out, and with Jalen Twyman opting out. And then, you got Brandon Hill out there. You got Eric Howlett, a lot of reps out there. You got the cornerbacks, a lot of reps out there. And Damari Mathis is on the sidelines. You're going to get him back. You saw a lot of these younger players get reps. And I felt like, all right, the defense will probably take a step back because Rashad Weaver and Patrick Jones were so good. But they're, but overall, this defense should be able to play at a pretty high level again. The big question again was going to be, could they score enough on offense? Could they put up points on offense? And that was going to be really tough when you're breaking in a brand new quarterback. Well, now they're not breaking in a brand new quarterback. And Tyler Buchanan jumps in and asks, does Jimmy Morrissey come back? Those guys are very close. That's a good question. I don't know about Morrissey, but I think there's a real possibility you could see some of the guys on offense, maybe one, maybe two, decide to follow Kenny Pickett's lead and return. Guys who, maybe didn't, guys who already said they were going to leave, guys who walked at senior day. You could see one or two decide to turn around and come back and, play another year at Pitt, which is an interesting sort of angle. And the other interesting angle, the TRR brought it up, I wonder if Mark Whipple is returning too. And I don't know, but I'm a lot more inclined to think that he might be with Kenny Pickett returning. I don't know if Kenny Pickett would return if he felt like he was going to have a new offensive coordinator to work with. That's just hypothesizing on my part. That's just a little bit of educated guesswork on my part. But I don't know if Kenny Pickett decides to come back and try to make his final, final appeal to the NFL, or make his final pitch to the NFL while working with a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterbacks coach. I think this might be that. Not only is Kenny Pickett coming back, but I think this might be Mark Whipple is coming back as well. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that. We're going to talk to Pat Narduzzi on Wednesday and for signing day and get certainly have a lot of opportunities to ask him questions. We've got a whole new topic to ask him about. Thought we were just going to talk to him about recruiting, but now we've got plenty of questions to ask Pat Narduzzi about Kenny Pickett returning. The Real Deal asks, with Kenny Pickett returning and Nate Yarnell coming in, do any of the current quarterbacks leave? And, this was always going to be a question whether Kenny Pickett was back or not. Even if Kenny Pickett didn't come back, if you came out of spring ball and it was clear that Davis Bevell was ahead or Nate Yarnell was ahead, or Joey Yellen was ahead or Nick Patty was ahead, you had to think that somewhere along there, somebody was going to decide, all right, I'm going. And I think the two you looked at were Davis Bevell and Joey Yellen. Both of those guys are going to be redshirt sophomores next year. Both of those guys are going to want their opportunity to be the starter. Neither of them is going to get it in 2021 now. You thought initially that one of them would probably win the job and then the other one might decide to leave, and transfer. But now with Kenny Pickett coming back, you would think neither one of those guys is going to make the decision. Neither one of those guys is going to win the starting job, which is going to leave them having to face a decision. Do you wait another year or do you go somewhere else and try and win a starting job, somewhere else? It's the whole situation looks a lot different. The whole outlook for this offense and for this team looks a lot different with Kenny Pickett coming back for one more year. And I don't think he was intending to do this. I think this is a decision he made over the past, I would say probably few weeks. I think he walked at senior day when Pitt hosted Virginia Tech because he intended to be done with his Pitt career. I don't know if he, I don't know if his, I have a lot of questions for Kenny Pickett actually, because I think it's pretty, he didn't play great against Clemson. He didn't play great against Georgia Tech. I don't know if that would have played into it or not. I think he's got the potential to play in the NFL. Clearly he feels like he can do more to improve his stock. And like I say, make another appeal to the league, make another pitch. Andrew Callahan asks, who's Kenny Pickett's biggest target next year after Jordan Addison? That's a good question. And I'll be interested to see who that turns out to be too. I would guess the second leading receiver on next year's team will be Jared Wayne, would be my guess. I would think that, I think you're going to see Jalen Barden get a lot more involved in the offense next year than he was this year. Obviously, Jordan Addison's going to be the main guy. Taysir Mack is going to be back, and we'll see what his role is. I feel like he sort of fell off as the season went on this year. Shockey Jacques-Louis is kind of the same way. I think he's got more potential than he has shown, and I think he can do a lot more. And you're bringing in some freshmen. I don't know if they're going to be ready to step in just yet. Look, your ideal situation is, I think if you're Pitt, your ideal situation is your leading receivers are Jordan Addison, Jared Wayne, Lucas Krull, Jalen Barton. That's how I would line it up if it was me. And you're going to get Lucas Krull back for another year. He came to Pitt looking to make his case as an NFL prospect. He didn't do that because he only played in one game and he got hurt. So I think he's coming back. He wants to show what he can do. And I think Kenny Pickett wants to be able to throw to Lucas Krull. I think Kenny Pickett talked about that a lot in the offseason. They worked together a lot in the offseason. He was looking forward to having that target at tight end, but he never had him. He never had that opportunity to throw it to him other than, like I say, one game, and Krull didn't do much in that situation. I think your ideal scenario, like I say, is that Krull slots in as maybe your third leading receiver. Maybe third in receptions, but fourth in receiving yards because Jalen Barton turns fewer receptions into more yards. I think that's how I think it would set up best. I think if you're Pitt, that's who you would like to see sort of lead the charge. Addison, Wayne, Krull, Barton, but we'll see how it all shakes out. I think Jared Wayne is good. I don't think he gets enough credit. You talk about under-the-radar receivers. I think Jared Wayne has shown enough potential to be whether you want to call him a possession receiver. I think that's a good role for him. He's sort of a big physical receiver who I think has better hands than it seems like he does. I think he's a more reliable pass catcher than he has looked at times. But I think he can function as a number 2 wide receiver for this team, or at least second on the team in receptions. I think we might be having are we having buffering issues again? I apologize for that. Let's see. RJC Man 38, our super chatter asked, Kenny Pickett averages how many wins a season at Pitt? I was ready to see Pitt move on, honestly. Well, Kenny Pickett I think is 21-15 as the starter at Pitt, including the Miami game in 2017. Then obviously there were he missed 2 games this year and 1 game last year. He ended up at 21-15 as the starting quarterback at Pitt. He has led Pitt to its only Coastal Division championship. And I think if you have the opportunity to have a 5th-year senior, a 4th-year starter at quarterback, I think you want to take that and see what you can do with it. I think you have more certainty about who Kenny Pickett is. Like who he is a lot more than who Bevel or Yellen are. And I understand if some fans would like to find out who Bevel and Yellen are. But I think you take the sure thing, which for right now is Kenny Pickett. And I think it's a good option to have. TRR asks the starting line, who will protect Kenny Pickett? And that's a $1 million question right there. And I feel like we talked about this a little bit, that you don't really know who's going to be out there, which guys are going to be how they're going to be lined up, because you've got guys with versatility. I mean, you obviously Owen Drexel is a center, but Jake Cradle can play guard or center. Gabe Hoy could play, and Matt Gonsalves could play tackle or guard. Carter Warren could probably play guard if they needed him to. So you've got a bunch of guards, you've got a bunch of tackles, you've got a couple guys who can play center, and then you have that added, question of, do any of the guys who were going to leave decide to come back? Jimmy Morrissey, does he come back? I don't think so, but we can't 100% rule it out. Bryce Hargrove, does he choose to come back? I wouldn't mind having Bryce Hargrove back as your left guard again. And then you've got, think about the guys you would have then. You could pick Carter Warren or Matt Gonsalves for your left tackle. Bryce Hargrove would lock you down at left guard. Then, you could really, the other 3 spots, you can mix and match however you like. Gabe Hoy and Carson Van Lin and Blake Zabovic and Jake Cradle and Owen Drexel. Find your best 3 out of that group. And as long as it includes either Drexel or Cradle, you're good. You can use any combination there, because Carson Van Lin could play guard or tackle. Gabe Hoy could play guard or tackle. Cradle and Drexel both can play center. And Cradle, obviously can also play guard. So, you've got a lot of options there, and if you added a guy like Bryce Hargrove back into the mix, you've got even more options. There could be a real, there could be a fallout effect from this Kenny Pickett decision to return. This is big news here on a Tuesday night. The night before signing day, Kenny Pickett drops a news bomb on us right here in the middle of the podcast. So, let me see. We got any other questions? I mean, and yeah, some people are talking about, Mark Whipple potentially returning. And I mean, yeah, I would have to think that we could probably read into Kenny Pickett's return as being, something of an indication that there probably won't be a change at coordinator this year. Now, I mean, that's me hypothesizing. That's me just educated guesswork, but I would almost be surprised. And I understand the concerns about Mark Whipple. I mean, look, the offense hasn't been productive over the last 2 seasons. I do think there are things that were not his fault. I was thinking about this during the Steeler game on Sunday night that, none of these offensive coordinators call plays where the passes are supposed to be dropped. I mean, that's not in the playbook. That's not in the game plan. You catch more of those passes, and I think things look a little different for, the offenses. There are still big issues. There are big issues with Pitt's offense. There are big issues with the Steelers' offense. There are things that Pitt's offense needs to do better. There are things that Pitt's offense needs to do less. If they can't run the ball any better in 2021, the impact of Kenny Pickett's return is going to be somewhat negligible. No, I mean, it'd be better to have Pickett in no running game than I think one of the inexperienced quarterbacks in no running game. But they've obviously got to get better at running the ball. I don't think there's any question about that. They've got to improve, the ball security of just catching passes. Because if you don't, then it almost doesn't matter what plays you call. If you can't rely on guys to catch passes, you're really sort of hamstrung at what kind of offense you can run. And you know what? Kenny Pickett has something to do with some of those drop passes too. I mean, when you're firing fastballs at guys, they're not going to catch all of them. There needs to be a little more touch. He needs to improve in that regard. But in terms of a guy who's tough, who's a leader, who can make a lot of throws, has made a lot of big-time plays for Pitt this year, and over the course of his career, I think it's a good thing to have him back. Mike Gibson says, my main concern with Whipple is the lack of red zone touchdowns. And yeah, that's absolutely been a concern over the last 2 years. There's no question that Pitt has had an issue scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And I think it cost them the Miami game, for one. And, and it's kept a number of other games closer than they should be. It's put other games in jeopardy when they shouldn't be. And it's cost them games over the last couple of years. So, red zone, big problem, no question about it. I think having an effective running game would help in that regard because I think you obviously get limited in your passing game once you get into the red zone. If you have a pass-heavy offense that really does rely on throwing the ball to move downfield, all of a sudden you've got a bunch of plays chopped out of your playbook when you are 20 yards and closer to the end zone. There are fewer plays available to you because you don't have as much real estate to work with. But if you have an effective running game, then that's a threat, and defenses don't have to just, prepare for and defend your intermediate passing game and your short passing game. They would also have to defend your running game, and that's going to open up opportunities for you. So, I think... I think that would go a long way in improving Pitt's success in the red zone scoring touchdowns is, improving the running game. And I don't know what the answer is there. I don't know if it's different offensive linemen. I don't know if it's different running backs. I don't know if it's just better blocking or better game plan. I'm not smart enough to tell you what the biggest issue is with Pitt's running game. I just know it hasn't been good enough over the last 2 years, and it's hurt the offense. It's held them back considerably. Now, of course, they're coming off one of the best rushing games in 2 or 3 years. Coming off the best rushing game of the Mark Whipple era at Pitt, with Vincent Davis going for 247 at Georgia Tech. But they need to get they don't need to do that every game, but something a little closer to that every game is what they do need. All right, 210 Speed and Agility checking in. It's our man Dwayne Brown. Good to see him. He says, "What's up? Where are you at signing day tomorrow?" I'm not going anywhere for signing day. I don't think any of these guys are having signing day press conferences or ceremonies. And if they are, I'm going to be here at home for a couple of reasons. Mostly because I don't have any intention of walking into high schools right now. And Also, just kind of got to be home and keep things moving here. But we will definitely be online all day. We'll be on Twitter. Obviously, the message boards at Panther-Lair.com are going to be bumping all day on signing day because, we've gotten distracted by this Kenny Pickett news. But, it is signing day, as we started off talking about. So if you're listening to this, if you're tuning in late to the live stream and you're like, why isn't he talking about recruiting? You need to go listen to the first 45 minutes of this thing before we got distracted. I told you news might break on this little device here, this phone. And sure enough, there it was, Kenny Pickett breaking the news right there that he has decided to come back. That's big news. So we're going to dig into that and go write some things and interact on the message board. Listen, signing day. You only need to be one place on signing day. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. We're going to have so much content for you. You won't even believe it. We got some really cool things coming. Some really, really cool content. Some new things we haven't done before, and I'm excited for you guys to check it out because I think you're really going to enjoy some of the things we're rolling out here on Wednesday on signing day. So make sure you stay tuned. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, all day on signing day because it's going to be lively. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time. Let me see what else. Homefieldapparel.com. Make sure you go check them out. Get some sweet Pitt shirts or any college team you want because they're licensed by a lot of schools to sell merchandise. So make sure you go check them out. Homefieldapparel.com. Of course, we got the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. That's a little hour of Pitt sports talk on The Fan that I host. So make sure you go and check that out. And we will, of course, be talking lots of recruiting then. And then we will, let me see here. Trying to think if we should do another live stream at some point. Maybe we'll do one. Tomorrow night Wednesday night there's a basketball game. Maybe we'll do one on Thursday. We'll have to see. We'll figure out. If we don't talk about it before, we'll definitely refer to the. We'll recap the recruiting class. If not sooner, we will do it next Tuesday night. But thanks for everybody for tuning in and coming along on this adventure of talking about recruiting and then getting sidetracked by Kenny Pickett. But big news tonight, and you could tell your friends you were on the Panther-Lair.com live stream when you heard the news that Kenny Pickett was coming back to Pitt. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you tune in to it during the week, make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com on signing day. We're going to have lots of coverage for you. And have a great night. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you again sometime soon.